What's going on, my fellow internet friends? Long time no see, but it is for a good reason. I was gone on a family trip for a couple of days. Whoa, I took a vacation while we're this close to starting the Scrappy Boy? Yes, and it was very beneficial, I'll tell you why. It was a very much needed mental recharge. Although I do love being at the stable, a change in scenery is always nice to recharge the creative juices. But boy, were my juices recharged. That's an odd way of phrasing it, but let me show you. When I got back, I decided to make this place look a little bit more comfortable. Finally decided to put up all of the artwork I had laying around, as well as hooked up this lower loft area with some LEDs, and look at this. I decided to go crazy and mount these headers on the wall because why not? Look how pretty they are. I figured why not make my workplace somewhere I myself would like to hang out. That way it feels more like a hangout rather than work. Michael Sanchez had asked on our Patreon why we didn't make these a little bit more symmetrical. Well, let me tell you why I very much can't and won't do that. All of this artwork was sitting here for the longest time just collecting dust because I was trying to figure out what way the paintings would all look good and symmetrical, and that is the reason I never put them up, because it was just too overwhelming. How was I going to organize them? I was trying to make them linear, and I just can't. All of these went up randomly. There was no specific order in which I wanted to put them up. It was just holding a painting and holding the impact. It looks good right there, buzz it in, and that's it. So if I would have planned for symmetry, I would have gotten overwhelmed and none of these would have gone up. But back to the point of this video, we have an array of parts here that we have to install. And why don't we start off with the starter. The starter currently has no wiring for it, so let's focus on that. I'm thinking we should do the same style pass-through that we did for the alternator wire. We have plenty of room on this 90-degree bend right here to accommodate for another one of those little bungs. The wiring harness we had purchased for this car came with this about 10-gauge wire for the starter motor, but we're gonna upgrade to the larger 4-gauge wire to handle more of that amperage without the wire getting too hot. In this case, size does matter, contrary to what your wife might have told you. Whoa. Well, now we bent it. No need to fear. The hammer and dolly are here. I probably shouldn't have been drilling that close to the fuel lines. Speaking of fuel, shout out to Bob Miller for today's coffee. I'm actually gonna run the starter wire from the bottom port and the alternator through the top one. All right, now we can throw on the actual starter. In order to know what proper length we need for this wire, we're gonna go ahead and add one terminal end. So this starter wire is going to get hooked up to this terminal on the starter solenoid. This terminal only gets power when we turn that key all the way up to the crank position. Then once we release that key from the crank position, it no longer has power. Alrighty. Now she gets fed through the pass-through we just made. I think we got lucky with the cut of this wire. If it was too short, we would have had to discard this whole wire. But I think that should be enough. All right, so slight issue, but just slight. Once we connect this cable to the terminal end, it kind of sticks out a little bit too much outwards. So once the headers are in, it kind of comes into contact a little bit too close for my liking. So I think we gotta get creative here. So this is what we came up with, a small L bracket with two 5/16 holes. Let me show you guys how this is gonna help us. So once again, without the bracket, this cable would protrude outwards a little too much, and we also can't really bend it that much at an angle right here. Where this bracket is going to come in handy, once we pop it on right here, then we'll have a good spot to connect. As you can see, the bracket now allows the cable to be not at such an abrupt angle, and now allows that starter cable to be more tucked in against the block. Yes, we're gonna use a heat protective sleeve on these cables, but yeah, that's looking good. I like that. Is it darker in here? I think one of our lights just went out. Huh. If only we had a handy Mexican around. Hola! Whoa. Órale. All good, bots. Oh, sweet. That was pretty fast. Alrighty, folks, the starter is now all hooked up. We even got the little jumper cable right here. And if you don't know what this little jumper cable is for, then I'd suggest go looking at the last video. But yeah, starter motor is all hooked up now. And if you look at our to-do list, which looks very similar to the list my wife has for things to do around the house, we got the starter in, so we... What? Damn, did I accidentally write this in permanent marker? Why is it getting worse? Anyway, next up we have to wire the alternator. If you guys remember, we have a 140 amp alternator from CVF Racing. Shout out to them. That's what we have to wire up, which may sound easy, but it's not. See, it would be easy and straightforward if we just followed the factory routing for the alternator cable, which would have gone something like this on the fender apron. But if you guys remember the 1,000 times that I've said it, I don't want any wires on the fender aprons. So what am I gonna do instead? I'm gonna make my life a little bit more complicated. We're going to route the alternator tucked by the engine, and it's gonna go something like this. So the alternator cable is going to come out of the bung or plug, whatever you want to call it, follow the same routing as the starter wire, and I'm using the word cable and wire interchangeably, just bear with me, but it's going to be down and tucked right by the engine. It's going to go through this engine mount and then lead towards our alternator. And yes, I know some of you smart people are already thinking,
whoa, 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 you're putting a live wire on a hot, moving, vibrating engine?
Exactly. I have an idea that I believe to be the safest option when doing something like this. But before we get into how we're gonna do that, let's go over the dangers. All right, so here's the diagram of the wiring. You can see our alternator right here, and this is going directly into our ignition hub, which is this guy that consists of two 125 amp fuses, but the alternator cable or wire is only hooked up to this single mega fuse. So let's say for whatever reason this alternator cable rubbed through or got burnt or whatever and ended up grounding itself. While it's grounding out, it's going to pull a ton of amperage, popping the 125 amp fuse, this guy. Once that 125 amp fuse is popped, we will no longer have alternator power flowing into the fuse box nor the battery. But if the engine is still running, that alternator is still spinning and producing current, pushing it through that cable until it either burns through or burns the car down. So we want to have some sort of fuse as close to the alternator as we can. That way, if the cable does ground out, this fuse will stop the flow of the alternator going anywhere in between these two fuses. Initially, I was going to run the alternator wire straight through with no fuses, but S&T talked me out of that, so I had to figure something out. I think I might have gotten a little bit distracted. I ran another 100 feet of LED light strips, and I say it looks pretty damn cool. I mean, I really should have been working on that guy, but they got here in the mail and I just couldn't help myself. But yeah, let's get back to work. So from this piece of cardboard, we now made this bracket right here, which is going to be secured by 2 small screws. These are actually left over from the Phytech fuel sending unit bracket. And unlike the other bracket we made, this one's not going to conduct any current, so we could paint it. But I mean, we could also let it rust. Rust is kind of the theme here. And speaking of theme, this is another bracket made out of scrap parts, just like our Scrappy Boy here. And look at that. Nothing on the aprons, it looks super clean. We have our newly made bracket and fuse now solidly mounted, kind of tucked in, kind of hidden. From the top, you can't even see them. We have the wire well tucked in, and once again, it's gonna get a heat protective sleeve, but I really like how this turned out. This is solid, it's safe. And while I'm down here already, I might as well install this before I start the car with no oil in it. All right, next step is spark plug wires. We have a set of 8mm Taylor spark plug wires that are custom fit, so all of these have to be cut to length appropriate to whatever project you're working on. But in order to know how and where to cut those wires, we've got to install the headers. So we ran into a potentially very bad problem. I was bolting on the driver's side headers, and I don't know how in the world I did not notice this before. One of the holes for the header bolts is partially stripped. As you can see, this side, it does not go in unless obviously we rotate it inwards. But this side, it goes halfway in before it even bites any threads. So that's very annoying. And some of you may be thinking, it's okay, you could just leave that one bolt out and all of the rest will make up for it. But with this set of headers having separate flanges, if I were to leave that bolt out, it would mean that this whole primary tube would be only 50% secured. And with this bolt length plus the thickness of that flange, it won't even grab any threads once the header is installed. So we're gonna try something in the meantime, because I definitely don't feel like rethreading that hole or putting a helicoil in it. That's just, oh my God, what a pain. All right, so it's on now. It looks like it's holding up. I mean, time will tell. But yeah, headers are in place, gaskets in place. So in order to throw on the oil filter for this engine, we gotta add this little adapter guy. This is going to thread in right into our block. If you notice, there are 2 different thread sizes. This one is going to go directly into the block, and the other end goes right into our oil filter. But in order to thread it into the block, we need a really fat Allen, which I don't have that size, so we gotta get creative. Neither of these are compatible thread sizes, but now it is permanently stuck, and now we have a little handy dandy tool for our oil filter adapter. All right, now we can throw on our filtre a huile, and yes, I did lube up the gasket. Ow! Owie. Man, only I would get injured changing an oil filter. But shout out to my man Demon View for sending us a first aid kit. Also, speaking of our Patreon, I know I had said I wanted to fill the entire car with the names of our Patreons, but I have since changed my mind. We are only going to fill up this quarter panel and nothing else, because there's a couple people that have since discontinued their support on our Patreon, and they're still on there. I'm gonna leave them on there, I don't care, but I don't want that to happen with the rest of the car. So we do have some new Patreons that do have their spot reserved right here, but we only have a couple more spaces. So if you want your name on the Scrapstang, here's the link. Holy crap, that oil filter is huge. I am so lucky it clears the cross member. That's something I didn't even think about. All right, now it's time to do what I've been putting off for the last couple weeks, the spark plug wires. So once again, all of the spark plug wires have to be cut to size, and all of the boot ends and terminal ends have to be installed. I'm not scared, you're scared. I've only done this once before, and it was to a single spark plug wire, not a whole set. I've learned very early on to be scared of spark plug wires because they don't play by regular rules of electricity. They don't care if they are grounded or not. They will shock the living hell out of you. Ask me how I know. Anyway, we gotta get it done regardless, so we'll start off with our cylinder number 1. Pop it into place. This is gonna go maybe right here. And if I mess this up, I just wasted $80. So there's that. I think I might have cut it just a little bit too short. All right, now that we have our cut made, we can add our boot and terminal. I hope I'm doing this right. Actually, scrap the whole spark plug idea right now because I don't have the proper crimpers in order to do this, so yeah. But don't worry, I know what we can do. If you guys remember, I've been saying that we might have some issues finding radiator hoses because we move the engine backwards and downwards. We got them. Because this car consists of a plethora of different parts of scrap pieces from this car, scrap pieces from that car, we have a couple different options here. This one is a lower radiator hose for a 66, 65 Mustang. This one is a lower radiator hose for a 2001 Mercury Mountaineer, which is what this engine came out of. And then this last one is an upper radiator hose for a 65, 66 application. And for the moment of truth, the cheese of truth. Yeah, buddy. It's so nice when something actually comes together. Yeah, look at that, like it was meant to be. I've noticed that usually with these hoses, they do come in an excess length. So in my previous cars, I've had to cut them a little bit shorter because there's too much. And no, look at this, it's freaking perfect right here. The engine relocation was spot on. There you go. Don't get too excited because we're not done yet. I feel like these are gonna give us some sort of hassle. All right, for this first one, I could already see it doesn't really match up very well. I mean, it'll slip on, but it's like, it's not the right angle, so it's kind of kinked down here and it's trying to slip off up here. I think I will call that a no. This one looks even worse, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, if we were to cut it, maybe like right here, it might work. Might. I think this one might work with a little bit of trimming, but the issue is if I trim it and it doesn't work, I definitely can't return it. And yeah, before I modify this and deem it unusable and unreturnable, I'm gonna do a little bit of research before I do that. All right, so I wasn't really able to find anything online. Is this the same hose? Why does it look different? Huh, all right, let's check this out. I mean, it kind of fits. I know it will work, but I don't like how it's like kind of stretched. It's not kinked or crushed in any place. I don't know. It's sealed on both ends and it's not kinked, so I don't know. Guys, this to-do list is looking pretty empty. So that means we are damn close to getting this thing started. And before we even finished filming this video, Michael Sanchez reached out and said that he sent us a pair of spark plug wire crimpers. So let's give him a huge thanks in the comments. But we have one more thing to do before we can call it ready. When we installed this electric radiator fan, we were having some issues with it vibrating and kind of moving around. And that was strictly due to these mounting tabs that I used. As you can see, they're pretty flimsy. It's not the best way to secure these fans. Any guesses on what we have to do? right, so this is what we came up with. I used some scrap metal and some spare hardware to make these. As you can see, we have a welded carriage bolt right here, so that obviously is not coming off, and a little hole right here. And the way this is gonna work, the carriage bolt allows for nothing to be touching the actual core of the radiator. And from here, we can choose our mounting location, which I believe I want it to be right here. And now, slip on that guy. Oh, yeah, baby. So this is the side view of the bracket that we made. We have the carriage bolt welded onto the plate. Then we have a small spacer here. I think it's about 1/8 of an inch. And then that's secured with a nut and a bolt. And that's what it looks like with all 4 of them bad boys installed. I like how they came out. I mean, it serves a purpose and it serves it well. Or I guess we have to find that out. Do we test it or should we wait till the next video? I say we should try it. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Yeah! That is 1,000 times more stable than it was. The fan itself, look, I have to shake the entire car in order to budge it. Ladies and gents, she's ready. I am so ready, so damn excited. I have the chills because I'm ready to hear this thing fire up. We made some really good progress in this video. I know I keep repeating it, but I am dying to hear this thing start up, which should be in the next video. So make sure you guys have your notifications on and subscribe to the channel. With that being said, thank you guys for hanging out. We will see you on the next one when the Scrapstang fires up and takes its first breath.